The Daily Code Snippet. Previously, we discussed how for a service-based fontface method, all you need to do is to get lines of code that you need to embed from the service's website and add it to your code. And then you should find out the language you need to use to activate that code. So we saw how with Google Fonts, all you do is go to their website, choose the font, select the weights and styles you want, and then copy the code provided and place it in the head element. This code is the link element that allows your web page to connect to Google servers to pull in the font files that are needed for your chosen font. And then you need to look at the CSS rules to specify families. This tells you how you need to write out the font name in your CSS in order to pull that font into your styles. You need to use the language that Google understands, and it is always a good idea to still include a font stack just in case there is an issue with the server. While we went over what to do with Google, the process will be very similar with other services. We will still need to get an embed code or link to that service's servers, and then we need to understand what code we need to add to our CSS that the service will understand. In comparison, we mentioned that traditional @fontface means we need to provide the different type file formats, so there needs to be a mechanism for us to produce those different type of file formats if they are not provided by the type foundry from which we obtained the font. If you are purchasing a font and properly licensing it, typically the foundry will provide all the font files you need. However, if you are obtaining a free font online, you may only be provided some of the file formats and need to convert the file in other formats. If you have obtained a font without properly licensing it for use on the web, then you should not use this method to produce the files. In fact, the service will ask whether you have a proper license, and in some cases, it will not even work if it finds you do not have a proper license. You should never use a font on the web without proper licensing. Squirrel has an @fontface generator where you can upload a font file, and it will then convert the file into the web file formats that you need. Once the conversion is completed, you will receive a folder of files as well as a style sheet that indicates how the font can be loaded into your web page. Here is a demo of it. So here we are on the website fontsquirrel.com, and we've gone to the tab that says generator to find their @fontface generator. And you can see here that there's a button to upload your fonts, and then you can select what kind of conversion you want to do. And I'm going to leave it on the recommended setting, which is optimal, which is recommended settings for performance and speed. And I'm going to click that yes, the fonts I'm uploading are legally eligible for web embedding. And it does have a disclaimer here that that you're using their service in good faith, that you should honor the licensing agreements of your fonts. So I'm going to use a font that I have legally purchased and have access to. And I see that you can see that I have the open type format and the true type format for this font. So I'm going to go ahead and upload the font. I'm going to upload the open type font. So it did actually get it, and it's going to show the font that it uploaded right here. It's the open type font. It has 334 glyphs, and it's 470 kilobytes. So now that I've uploaded the font, there's a button that appears, download your kit. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And while it's processing the font, you're going to see this this bar that shows the progress. And depending on the size of your font, it'll take a certain amount of time. So this wasn't a lot of space, so it was actually pretty quick. And so it automatically downloaded my kit. So once I download this web font kit, we can take a look at what kind of files that you receive. And so we can see that we have an HTML file, we have a WOFF file, and a WOFF2 file, and a TXT file, and a folder of more specimen files, and a style sheet. So if we click on our HTML to take a look at it, we will see that this is what a specimen of this script file looks like. So, as most script files are, they're difficult to read in paragraph text. So you would probably never want to use this as a body text. You would want to use it only really for display. So some sort of heading. And so we can see samples of layouts. And you also want to look at, depending on what your needs are, you can see what languages are supported by this typeface. And you can also look at what glyphs are included in the typeface. And it does actually give you information on how to upload this kit and how to use it. And it also tells you how to basically, what code you need in your style sheet to use this font. So you can see that we've gone over this before, the @fontface command as a selector, and these are the different rules. So we have font family, and it's whatever the web font is, and then you have your source, and then the URL of where the files are located. And then in order to pull the style sheet in, you're going to use this link font. And depending on where you put it in, now it's assuming that you're going to put it at the same level as the HTML file, but typically I tend to put my style sheets in a styles folder that's inside an assets folder. So I'll have assets / maybe CSS / style sheet, that's CSS. So it really depends on how you organize your files, what the URL will be. Just like I will probably put the actual source files in a folder that says, assets / font / and then that's where the files will be. And then when you're using the font, you're going to put the selector of whatever text you want. So in our case, we'll probably use it for maybe an H1 or an H2 and put the font family. And then you're going to reference the name of the font. And it gives you some information about how to troubleshoot this if it doesn't work. So that's what the HTML file is for. So open this in a browser. You can get information on how to install the font. You can get information on the language support, what glyphs are involved, a sample of what it would look like, and a specimen file. And we have our WOFF, and we have our WOFF2. And then let's take a look at this text file, and I would open this up in, I can open it up in BBEdit, I can open it up in any sort of word processing. So this is just a file that tells you what the settings were to generate the font files. So we just finished looking at the HTML file in a browser, but we can also look at the code of that HTML file. And so the CSS style sheets inside the specimen files folder are the CSS files that are governing that HTML file we just looked at on the web page. So if you look at the code of the HTML file, you see that there are two style sheets being linked, and that would be the specimen style sheet. So we have that specimen style sheet CSS. And if you look at the specimen style sheet, it's also importing a grid style sheet, and that's what the other style sheet is. And so the grid style sheet is basically, as you would imagine, it's basically determining the grid of that HTML page. So if we look again at that HTML page, basically the grid of this page is being determined by that grid CSS file. So for instance, the grid on here in the glyph chart. So that's all being determined by these two files. So these are not files, these three files, the HTML file, the CSS file, that's a grid, and the CSS file, that's a specimen style sheet. These are not files that you need to load into your website. These are basically informational files that help you understand what you asked Squirrel to do, what files it generated. So really the only files that you're going to need to gather together to put on your website are the newly generated web open font face files, the WOFF and the WOF2 files. You can add that to your collection of fonts that you need to make sure you have loaded up on your website in order to use this font. So I can create a folder that has all the different files that I want here. Now the one that we have missing is the EOT file. That wasn't generated by our font face generator. This style sheet, however, this last style sheet we'll take a look at, is actually what you would need to be using in your site. So you can either load it as an actual style sheet and use that kind of @import option that we saw with the grid, or you can just kind of copy this and put it into your code, into your own CSS. And it's telling you that in order to use this font family, it's going to call it Boathouse Regular. So that's what you need to reference. And you may need to adjust this URL if you're going to have it in a particular folder. So if, like I said, I create a font folder, then for the browser to find the file, it needs to reference that relative file path correctly. So it may need to go into an assets folder, it may need to go into a fonts folder to find that file. And once everything is connected properly, then when you use this file referencing Boathouse Regular, it will load the font onto your page. So once you have the files, you will then need to upload these folders with the rest of your assets, such as images or other media. Then you need to make sure the CSS style sheet provided is being loaded properly so that you can access the fonts. A main drawback of the traditional add font phase is the loading speed of your website. Depending on the size of these font files, it may slow your website down. In addition, you have to consider the reliability of your hosting, since you are the one providing the font files on your server. If your host is down or the connection is slow, this will affect whether your custom fonts load properly. So you can see why service-based font face has become more popular. It is much simpler to bring custom typography into your websites, and if you are unhappy with the quality of choices provided by Google, a paid service such as Adobe Typekit or by other foundries may work better for you. With a service, you don't need to worry about proper formats, licensing, since this is included as either free or 3-year subscription, and Google and Adobe will generally have servers that are more reliable and faster than what you can purchase on your own. Presented by Designers Learn Code.